G'day everyone. I'm a bit knackered at the moment because I was up at about 6 o'clock this morning and didn't really finish working until about 6:15 tonight. And so as much as I did manage to get a couple of things done for myself during the day, the work sort of really came through late afternoon, and we were kind of hoping to finish something off tonight because obviously I'm off to Adelaide tomorrow, and that way by Wednesday it would have been approved and I'd be getting the get-go to finish them off on Wednesday when I come back. So yeah, tad tired, but I did make reference to the business that I run last night and what that's actually like to do. I guess the business name is DJG Designs. Now, for those that don't know, that's just my initials, my name, Damien John Griffin. My sister actually designed the logo when she was back in high school, and for one of these school subjects that sort of asks people to design a logo for a business, and so she picked me because I was already probably drawing by that stage, even though she's only 4 years younger than I am. And so she designed the logo, and I was basically already drawing probably by around about year 10 in school. And when I came out of school, I went straight to university, learned how to draw, apparently. I was working at the Noarlunga City Council as a trainee building inspector, and basically went through a whole range of different building companies. If you're in Adelaide, you'll know them, but Sterling Homes, Hickenbotham Homes, just general run-of-the-mill builders, and eventually got a job for a drafting company, and so there was only two of us, so I moved there. And then I got an offer from Queensland, which didn't work out, so I came back and worked for one of the builders that I've been doing work for, and all of it was always a step up, except for the thing in Queensland, which was a backward step. But luckily that didn't last very long. It was just a bugger to go sell the house, move all the way up there and come all the way back. And so I ended up at a company that does really good work. They still do. The two guys that own it are just phenomenal. One's a Greek, one's an Italian, and they get on absolutely famously. One of them's exceptional in terms of management of economies, and the other one is just a really, really top quality supervisor slash he can just run miracles on building sites, and I've got a lot of respect for both of them still. But then after about 2.5 years of working for them, I caught a cold, and it kind of, it's one of those things where I'd sort of not really taken any time off work. Sort of did my job, did a multiple of things for the company. I not only drew houses, but I was also selling houses, doing selections, colour selections with clients, dealing with all the councils, the engineers, everything that goes into basically the paperwork that ends up going out to site. So yeah, I did all of it. In fact, it was a lot of work, and in the end, it was too much work because we were selling probably around about 100 houses a year, and I was doing all the selling. I mean, I think the two owners were doing a bit themselves, but it always ended up on my desk. And then basically, yeah, I caught a cold. And I think after a couple of days, one of the bosses came in and said, "You need to go home." And so I went home and basically collapsed. And then was at home for probably a couple of days. And then one night, as you do, I needed to go to the toilet. And so I got up. I was actually sleeping in a different bed to my then wife. And because I didn't want her to catch it. And so I got up, went and sat on the toilet to do a number one, a pee. And nothing, not a drop. I sat there for probably 2 hours and I was busting and I couldn't get a drop out. I could no longer feel my legs. I couldn't move them. I couldn't put any weight on them. I'd lost everything, basically, from my waist down. So we went to the hospital. I ended up in the Royal Adelaide Hospital for about 2 weeks. Luckily, I got my bladder back very quickly, which was nice, but it would take a subsequent 3.5 months before I could actually walk. I spent all that time in a wheelchair doing physical therapy. I would rub towels on my feet just to get them to the point where I could actually feel them, because I was having to learn how to stand up without actually feeling where my feet were. It was to the point where you could have poured a boiling hot kettle of water on my legs and I wouldn't have had any idea you'd done it. The virus, and it was a viral infection, it was called transverse myelitis. I'm incredibly lucky to actually be walking. In fact, I shouldn't be, but I'm a stubborn bugger sometimes, and I wasn't going to have any thought about not sort of walking out. Unfortunately, while I was in rehabilitation, the global financial crisis hit, and I was let go, and my wife desperately wanted to sue the building company, and I said no. They were incredibly supportive, but there was not much they could do, and they needed to carry on. They got rid of probably about 4 or 5 staff during that time. They got rid of a pile of property, and just thinking that the whole world was going to come falling down, which in South Australia it really didn't. I mean, it didn't affect us anywhere near as badly as it affected overseas. So it virtually meant, luckily I'd been doing a little bit of work for another building company while I was still working full time. I was doing stuff on the weekends and after work. And they said, look, once you're out of hospital, we'll fly you over here, because they weren't in Adelaide, and you can start doing all of our work. So DJG Designs was officially born. And that company virtually started my business. I started working from home, which was a bonus because I still didn't have my license back, although I did get it back shortly after. They actually took my license back, took it away, which wasn't a bad thing because I couldn't even get into the car in the first place. So I wasn't going to be able to drive anyway, but anyway, that's what they do. So I got my license back and started working from home, and that was 17 years ago. And I'm still going to this day. It was interesting to start with because there's no real information out on the internet as to how to start a business. I mean, most people just come up with an idea and just start doing it. But then there's the invoicing, there's the accounting, there's the taxation, there's getting the software, the hardware, everything set up so that you can actually run it efficiently and do it as well as you possibly can. And then there's the insurances on top of that as well, because I've got to have professional indemnity. I can't run a business without it. I have an accountant because as much as I do my invoices, nobody told me how it all worked. And they also didn't tell me how much tax I was going to have to pay. They just said, oh, just work it out on the average of, what you think you're going to earn. And it's like, if you're starting a business, and even to this day, I cannot tell you what I'm going to earn by the end of the year. It's physically impossible, and especially with the way the building industry is, it's up and down all the bloody time. So I honestly had no idea. So for every invoice I did, I just simply put 50% of it into a bank account, and I hoped like hell that was going to work. The way I did my invoicing was, luckily my ex-wife was really good with Microsoft Excel, and she set up an invoice that automatically worked out things like GST and other stuff. It would just automatically add things up. I still to this day have no idea what goes on behind the scenes with it, but I still use it 17 years later. And we also set up a spreadsheet on Excel that lists the date, who the invoice is to, when it's due, when it was paid, and what the amount is. And again, incredibly simple. Like, everyone was going, oh no, you need to get this program and that program, and it's like, this works. It works for me, and it still works for me. And the accountant, I've only ever had 3 accountants in 17 years. The first one, unfortunately, retired. The second one, basically, they just got too big for their bones. They started looking at bigger companies and got rid of all the smaller ones. I don't even know whether they're still going. And then the one that I'm with today, and they've all had to put up with, it's like they'll email me and say, can you email your BAS? BAS is a quarterly statement that we have to submit. And so I simply send them my spreadsheets, the incomings and the outgoings. I just go through my phone and basically write down what I need to write down, and they do the rest. And it just works. It's the simplest system in the world. There's no way it would work for a bigger company, but it works for me. And yeah, I've got statements on my PC that go back 17 years. I do, of course, back it all up. I'm not stupid. But yeah, it's simply the way I do it. I don't like chasing invoices. I'll just send an email, copy and paste from Excel onto Outlook, and then go, by the way, these are due. And most of the builders are really good. Most of the clients are really good. I think I've had about 3 people in 17 years that have said, no, not paying. And yes, they do exist. And a lot of them are fully aware of the law, and one of which was an architect. Similar name. I'm not going to say who it is. And then another one, unfortunately, was a friend who I did have a lot of respect for, but yeah, he just didn't want to pay. In the end, he did, but it was about 7 months later, after the due by date had gone, and I think the other one was just a one-off client who simply said, yeah, thanks for the plans, see you later, and blocked me, and blocked my emails. So I couldn't chase him. I tried getting someone to chase it, but they were told, take me to court, see if I care. And it was going to cost more to go to court than what it was to get the invoice amount. So in the end, I just thought, you know what, I'll just walk away. And it's kind of been like that. You know, look, on the whole, everyone is fantastic. I don't really have any complaints, and I've been lucky because some of the builders have gone bust. I certainly don't have the same builders that I started with. In fact, you know, I don't think I've actually got any that I started with. They're all different, and that's just the way it goes. Some builders have retired, some builders have gone bust, but it's certainly not an easy thing to do, to run your own business, by any means. I've honestly got to sit there from 7 o'clock through until whenever the last job comes through. There is no set hours. At one stage, I had not one boss, but nearly 15 bosses. And I was working, so I went through the first year from home. The second year, I decided to get an office because I was having too many people coming to the house, and it just didn't work. So I thought, no, got to be more professional. And I thought I had to be in the yellow pages, the white pages. None of that exists anymore, by the way. And so I got an office, which wasn't that far away from home. In fact, I think it took all of about 5 or 6 minutes to get to work every day. It wasn't very far. The problem was that I didn't know how to say no. And so at one stage I was starting work at 4 o'clock in the morning, not finishing until 8 o'clock at night. I'd get home, get up at 4, or, you know, be at work at 4. And I did that 7 days a week, not 5, 7 days a week. And I did it for nearly 3.5 months straight, before I was told in no uncertain terms that the birthday was on, and if I wasn't there, then good luck. So I decided to take a day off. So I got up, helped around the house, blah, blah, blah. And by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the comment was, just go back to bloody work. You're not helping here. So I did, and didn't get home until about 8 o'clock at night, because I was so stressed. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And so we started talking about seriously putting on an employee. And I didn't understand, to start with, how complicated it was to actually get an employee here in Australia. And it was to the point where if you employ someone for $40,000, you give them a wage of $40,000, then it's costing you as a business nearly 80. Think about that. So if you're on 120,000, it's costing the company you work for 240,000. Well, it's costing the company you work for another 120,000. And that's purely in insurances, in work cover, and the list goes on and on and on. And, you know, it's not a cheap exercise. It really isn't. And so then it was a matter of actually finding someone. And I thought, okay, well, I'll go to TAFE. Now, TAFE is similar to university. It's not quite the same qualifications, but the courses they do are exceptional. They really are. And it had taken me, I think by the time I started my business, I was on about 65,000 a year. And kids are coming out of a 4-year TAFE course in year 3 asking for $90,000. And I was just staggered. I thought, there is no way in hell I'm paying someone $90,000 looking at the experience that I had compared to the experience they had, going, sorry, good luck with that. I started at Sterling Homes on $24,000 a year. I mean, I had one pay rise that went up to 25. My next job was 40. Next job was 50. And it sort of gradually went up like that. But there was no way I was coming straight out of university at $90,000. It just, no, thank you very much. So I ended up finding a guy who was happy to work for 40. And I thought, if this is what it's going to be, then this is what it's going to be. So I put him on, taught him how to use the CAD system, but the guy was hopeless. Lovely guy. Got along with him really well. But it was very, very clear, especially one weekend where one Friday afternoon I got a phone call and the guy, the builder, was just, he was upset, but he wasn't sort of swearing at me because he understood. And I told him, look, I'll be back in here tomorrow morning. This was on Friday afternoon. I'm talking to him. I said, I'll be back on tomorrow morning. I said, you'll have it by 10 o'clock, and it will be perfect. And so came in at about 3 o'clock in the morning, got it through to him, rang him, and I said, it's on your email. Check it, ring me back once you've checked it, let me know what the go is. He rang me back and he said, perfect, you should have done it. And I said, yeah, I know, well. But it was taking him a week or at least a day to draw a 25 square metre transportable building, and I was knocking those off in about an hour. And it was after about 2.5 months. The way the laws work here is that after 3 months, if you have an employee that's with you for 3 months and one day, you can't just sack them on the spot. It takes like 3 letters of warnings and then 2 sit downs, and then it just goes on and on and on. Honestly, and in the meantime, you're paying for someone you don't want there. They make it just about impossible to get rid of employees. So at about 2.5 months, I called him in and I said, look, it's not working. He was more interested in finding a Ukrainian or Russian bride. He'd spend most of the day on the internet looking for stuff, and it didn't matter what I said to him. He'd just go back and do it again. So I don't know where he is these days, but I hope he's doing well, and I hope he's learnt a lesson. But yeah, it was certainly a lesson to me, and I've never had another employee since. I will do the work, even if it means doing stupid hours, even if it means working weekends. I will get it done. I need to keep clients, and that's just a fact. And it's different when you're an employee, because you're not interested in where the work's coming from. You don't care if you sit there for a couple of hours and you've got nothing to do. But when you're doing it for yourself, I need to know that I've got work coming in, not just this week, but in 6 months' time, in 12 months' time, because I'm now at the age where I'm too old to basically be employed by anyone. And they just want young people and people willing to learn. And And I've probably dug myself a hole because I'm still using the same software I did, 20 years ago, 22 years ago, and it works exceptionally well. I've never had a complaint from a builder. They have their usual complaints, but, certainly they can build everything that I draw. And so that's the main thing. The councils are happy with it. I just haven't gotten into the 3D stuff because nobody I know actually uses it. You certainly never see a carpenter using 3D drawings. You never see a bricklayer using 3D drawings. They always use only 2D. The only people that ever want 3D drawings are actually the clients who want to see what it looks like. But then, if you're good enough and you can explain it well enough, most clients will actually understand what you're trying to do. And most of them have a picture of what they want anyway. They've driven around, they've seen enough display homes, they just get it. In council these days, councils are asking for 3D drawings. But again, I kind of get the feeling that most of them are so used to seeing them that and even though it's not required paperwork, they expect that it's going to be there, because a lot of people just don't know how to build a house. The guys that are drawing it, they've got no idea. They just think certain things are pretty, and you can look at a set of drawings and know that they've never spoken to somebody on site before. They've never had feedback. They've never had, they've never walked onto a construction site. They might have put the hard hat and the high-vis jacket on and look pretty for a couple of hours, but they don't actually understand what's going on. And so they need the 3D because it's the only way they can actually see it. It's the only way they can draw it, because they just don't get the 3D elements. Whereas someone who's come from a background of drawing by hand, you actually have to think about things before you put pen to paper, and you have to understand how it all goes together. And you have to be able to explain it over a phone. So, if you have a timber estimator who rings up and goes, what's the go with this, and how do you put all this together, and blah, 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 what's your thoughts? You have to be able to talk to them in their language. You have to be able to talk about rafters and trusses and various other things. It's just part and parcel. And even when you go to site, like I'm going to go to site tomorrow, and I can't even begin to tell you how many people's houses I've walked into. It's in the thousands. I've photographed people's houses. I've walked into their houses at all times of the day and night. I've been left alone to go and measure up their house. And when I say measure, I mean literally you are measuring the ceiling heights, the room sizes, the door sizes, the window sizes, everything. And you've got to take that information back and actually reproduce it as a floor plan and elevations. So you've got to measure the eaves, the roof pitch. I can look at a roof pitch and I might be off by 2 degrees, but I can tell you what a roof pitch of a house is, as close as I can possibly get. So it's a huge thing you do, and I've got to basically let the builders know that I'm not going to be available tomorrow. And that's one thing about my phone. I don't receive emails on my phone. It's not that I can't receive emails on my phone, but I've learnt from experience that if I open an email on my phone, it disappears off my PC, and that's a killer. I can't have that sort of thing happening. Now, I'm sure there's a workaround, but I'm certainly not technologically advanced, and plenty of people have said, oh, no, you just do this, this, and this. Well, that's great for you, but it's not so much for me. So I don't do it. And it's working for yourself is basically how do I put it? I'm not sitting there on my own. Like if I've got a question about my superannuation, I make a phone call and they answer, and I get an answer straight away. It's no different to you're sitting in your office and you've got a question and you just go around to the next cubicle and you ask a question. I've got a team of people that I work with that don't just deal with me. They deal with plenty of other people, but they're there when I need them. And so you build up a team that isn't in your office, but they're there when you need them. Whether they're just an email away. Like if I've got a problem with my emails, I just make a phone call and within an hour it's fixed. You know, that's the way you've got to do it, because you realise that you're really good at certain things, but not so much at others. There's experts out there that do that stuff. So I don't do timber layouts, but I've got plenty of people that can. You know, it's different these days, but I won't go into that. But yeah, I mean, if I need an energy report, somebody says, oh, I need an energy report. Okay, here's a number, you go and call them, and it gets done. And then probably an hour later, I get an email that says, can you email the plans through so I can do the energy report? Yep, no worries, here you go. And it's done. You know, you've got to understand what your limitations are, more importantly than ever, because I'm good at drawing houses. I can draw, I can design, no problems at all. You give me a block and I'll come up with whatever you want. 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, double garage, single garage. Here's a block. It's triangular in shape. I want to get 3 houses on it. Okay, no worries. And within a couple of days, you've got it sitting on your table. That's what I do. And I've done it for years and years and years. And it's why I shared that library that I've got. The vast majority of those houses came from what I call throwaway houses. They've never been built, but they served exactly the purpose that they needed to. They got a block approved. The block was approved by council. The house plan was thrown away. The block went on the market and somebody's built whatever they want. So that's throwaway plan. So yeah, there's been a myriad of work. I've done everything from residential housing. I've practically redesigned some suburbs in Adelaide. I've done transportables. I've drawn houseboats, which was funny enough as it was. I've done extensions, renovations, bathrooms, entire, you know, sections on the back of houses, on top of houses. I've done small commercial, medium commercial. I've never done sort of large commercial or multi-story. Never been interested. Don't really want to be spending 2 years on one project. At one stage, I was drawing anything upwards of around about 350 homes a year. That number is way down these days, but that's okay because I have a life. And back then I didn't. So it's always been a work-life balance. I've had many relationships that have never understood what I do. They assume that because I'm home, that I'm available to them 24/7. And that's not the case. I might not have much to do at the time, but I have to be there in front of my computer from 7 o'clock in the morning through until 5 o'clock at night, even if I've got not a job on the screen to do. Because if I get a phone call, they want it there and then. They're not mucking around. And I'm the guy that does that. Most people are stunned at the turnaround time that I give them. You know, it is quite crazy. The 3 units that 3 townhouses that I've just done, did those. They're all ready. They're getting quoted by the engineers at the moment so we can lodge them into council. So, and they were, here's a block, you figure out the rest. So I had to figure out the private open space for the existing house. I had to basically ignore the 3 units to start with. I had to concentrate on the existing house first, make sure that all the rules and regulations applied to that first, and that gave me a boundary line. And from then on, you could design whatever you were putting out the backyard. And that's, you know, there's a sequence. You do things. I just watched a bit of Chance's latest video, and it's like riding a bike. You know, when you first start, you fall over a lot, but after a while, you just get on the bike and you just pedal. You don't even think about it. It's like getting into the car to drive. Seriously, when you first learn to drive, it's like everyone is just driving so quickly, and the lights coming at you at night are so blaring. And these days, I can get into a car and drive for 3.5 hours without any problems at all. I don't even think about it. And it's very much like drawing. And it's very much like, well, like Chance said, you know, drones, radios, whatever. You know, you do it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And after a while, you just don't think about it. It becomes so damn easy that you just can't understand how nobody else can get it. And some people are really good at teaching, and some people not so much. But that's okay. But then the moment you let it go for any sort of certain period of time, because you're not doing it over and over and over again, the next time someone asks you to go and pick it up and become this supposed expert that you perhaps once were, you've got to sort of think about everything you do. Like a lot of people have watched me work and just gone, oh my God, you know, you're not even looking at the keyboard. You're not even looking at the mouse. How do you know which buttons to press? And it's like, oh, don't get me to start thinking about it. Otherwise I'm going to screw up. Because I honestly don't know which buttons to press. I look at the mouse and just go, I don't know. But the moment I look at the screen and start drawing, it's like, bing, 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 bing. You know, it's muscle memory. It really is. I don't even look at the keyboard. I've got no idea what keys I'm actually pressing half the time. I know where my escape key is. I know where all the keys that I need to use. And I can do it basically two-handed. So I can run the mouse, run the keyboard, and just be looking at the screen, and not looking at the keyboard or the mouse. But if I go away for 2 weeks and I come back, I don't even know how to type my name. I mean, I'm looking at the keyboard going, you know, like this sort of situation. But then a couple of weeks later, it's like, done. You know, and that's what it's like. Running your own business is bloody hard, like really hard. You end up doing 90% of what you actually don't enjoy and 10% of what you do. But it does have its benefits, of course. Yes, I can organise my work week around Fridays. Might be able to take a couple of hours off. Instead of finishing at 5, I finish at 4 or 3, or sometimes even lunch. You know, and that's just the way it is. But sometimes you've just got to work 14 days straight, and that's client based, because you do whatever the hell you can to keep the clients happy, and make sure you're doing what you need to do. Make sure, you know, and the other thing that I haven't touched on is the ability to put your hand up and say, oh yeah, I stuffed that up, didn't I? Okay, no worries. I'll drop what I'm doing now. And I normally do it while I'm still talking to them, and I'll email it back. Because I'm human. I don't know whether you know that, but I'm not AI. And unfortunately, we do make mistakes. But you've got to own them. You've got to absolutely own it and be right up front straight away. No screwing around. That's the one thing that will piss most people off. Don't stuff around. If you've made a mistake, put your hand up and go, oh, I did this, and you fix it. So I've only ever had one issue with my professional indemnity insurance, and that was many moons ago. And that was my error. And I could honestly have fought it, because at the end of the day, by the time I got into construction, nearly 70 odd pairs of eyes had looked at that set of plans, and not one of them had picked it up. And it wasn't until it got to site that it was finally picked up, including the window company, including the estimators that looked at it, the council that looked at it, the builder that looked at it, the supervisor that looked at it. I mean, I could list off 30 or 40 different names that looked at it. But it was my error, and nobody picked it up. So I paid for it. Simple. And that was an error that I made. And as soon as I found out about it, I said, oh, shit, that's a problem. So we fixed it. I could probably go on and on and on. There's a billion stories, honestly, in my life that have occurred just through work. I've made an incredible amount of friends, people that I truly respect, hugely respect, people that I get along with really, really well. I've been to some of their weddings, their christenings for their kids. I've been out pew-pewing with them, and people know what that is. I've done a lot of things, and I'm very proud of all the work that I've done, because, like I've said in other videos, there's people that live their entire life in houses that I've drawn. They get married, they have their first kid, the kid walks its first steps, the birthday parties, the funerals, all these things that we do in the comfort of our own home, in the safety of our own home, and all houses that I was involved with. And there's been thousands of them. So I've never won an award. I refuse to pay to be in awards, so I've never won one. I see awards as being something that you earn, not something that you pay money to actually go into a competition to win. If you've done the right thing, people know. If my name won't be remembered, I'm sorry, it won't. But I can drive past suburbs and just go, yep, I drew that entire bloody street. And, maybe it'll be there in 20 years' time. Maybe it'll be there in 40 years' time. I don't know. And those people will never know. I've seen houses that I've drawn that we didn't think they would get 300,000 for, and they're now worth $1 million. Little what I call shit boxes, basically. But at the end of the day, we all have to have somewhere where we can take our shoes off at night, sit on the couch and watch TV, have our dinner and go to bed. And they may not be the houses a lot of people want to live in, but they are houses that people do live in, and they run their entire lives around them. And that's pretty damn good. So, yeah, I may have a most boring life, but it's a life, and that's a good thing. I'll catch you later.